Welcome to the channel NUMIS TREASURE HUB. Imagine this. You're sorting through your spare change after a grocery run, tossing pennies into a jar without a second thought, and sitting right there among the copper could be a 1988 Lincoln penny that collectors have paid up to $13 million for. Yes, you heard that right. 13 million. Not 1,300, not 13,000, but $13 million for a coin that looks almost identical to billions of others minted that same year. So what makes this particular penny worth more than a mansion, a fleet of luxury cars, and a lifetime of financial freedom combined? The answer lies in a minting error so rare, so extraordinary, that only a handful exist in the entire world. And the shocking part is that most people have no idea what to look for. They spend these treasures on coffee, drop them in parking lots, or leave them gathering dust in forgotten containers. But after today, you'll know exactly what separates a common 1988 penny from a fortune that could change your entire life. The 1988 Lincoln cent was produced in massive quantities at the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints, with billions of these copper-plated zinc coins flooding into circulation that year. Under normal circumstances, these pennies are worth exactly 1 cent, maybe 2 or 3 cents to a collector if they're in absolutely pristine condition. But here's where the story takes an incredible turn. During the minting process at one of these facilities, something went catastrophically wrong in the most valuable way possible. A small number of 1988 pennies were struck on the wrong planchet. Instead of being struck on the standard copper-plated zinc planchet that was supposed to be used for all pennies after 1982, these error coins were accidentally struck on bronze planchets that were intended for a completely different denomination. Now you might be thinking, how could such a massive mistake happen at a United States mint facility with all their quality control procedures and experienced staff? Well, the reality is that mint errors, while uncommon, do occur because these facilities produce millions of coins daily. And in the chaos of high-volume production, planchets from different denominations can occasionally get mixed up. What makes a 1988 error so exceptionally valuable is the specific combination of wrong planchet composition, the year, and the absolute rarity of surviving examples. When one of these error pennies surfaces at auction, collectors go absolutely insane bidding. Wars erupt, phone lines light up, and the final hammer price reaches levels that seem completely impossible for a coin you could theoretically find in your pocket change. Here's what you need to know to identify this potential fortune. First, the weight is your initial clue. A normal 1988 penny struck on the correct copper-plated zinc planchet weighs approximately 2.5 grams. But if you have a 1988 penny struck on a bronze planchet, it will weigh closer to 3.11 grams. That difference might seem tiny, but it's the telltale signature of an error worth millions. You'll need a precision scale that measures to at least 2 decimal places to check this accurately. Don't rely on your kitchen scale or a bathroom scale. Invest in a proper jewelry scale or visit a coin dealer who has professional equipment. If you're loving this treasure hunt through American coinage, smash that subscribe button right now, because NUMIS TREASURE HUB brings you these potentially life-changing discoveries every single week. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Beyond weight, the color can also provide clues. Bronze planchets have a distinctly different appearance compared to copper-plated zinc. The bronze composition gives the coin a richer, more golden copper tone, especially when compared side by side with a normal 1988 penny. Also, if you gently tap the coin against a hard surface, the sound it produces will be different. Bronze creates a more resonant ring, while copper-plated zinc produces a duller thud. But please, be incredibly gentle if you're testing a coin you suspect might be valuable, because any damage will drastically reduce its worth. The most famous example of a 1988 wrong planchet error sold at a major auction for an amount that made international headlines. Collectors from around the world competed for the opportunity to own this numismatic marvel. And when the gavel finally came down, the winning bid had reached heights that seemed completely surreal for a 1-cent coin. But hold on, because the next coin we're covering has an even more unbelievable story that'll make you rethink every penny you've ever seen. The grading of these error coins is absolutely critical to their value. A 1988 wrong planchet error in lower circulated grades might still be worth tens of thousands of dollars. But if you find one in mint state condition, particularly MS 65 or higher, you're looking at the multi-million-dollar range. Professional grading services like PCGS or NGC are essential for authentication and establishing the coin's grade. Never try to clean a coin you think might be valuable. Cleaning will destroy the original surfaces and crater the value. Even if it looks dirty or tarnished, leave it exactly as you found it and get it to a professional. Stick around. The coin coming up next has collectors fighting over it for reasons you won't believe, and the values will absolutely shock you. Now here's something that makes this even more exciting. These wrong planchet errors weren't limited to just one mint, which means examples could potentially exist from Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco, though the San Francisco Mint primarily produced proof coins in 1988. So circulating errors from that facility would be especially extraordinary. The key is understanding that these errors are incredibly rare. We're talking about possibly fewer than a dozen confirmed examples in existence. Maybe even fewer, which is why each discovery sends shockwaves through the numismatic community. Can you imagine being the person who discovers one of these in a jar of pennies you've been saving since the late 1980s? Someone out there might be sitting on a fortune and not even know it. That's why education and awareness are so powerful in the coin collecting world. Knowledge literally translates into financial opportunity. One particularly fascinating aspect of the 1988 wrong planchet errors is how they compare to similar errors from other years. The 1943 copper penny and the 1944 steel penny are legendary in numismatics for the same basic reason. They were struck on the wrong planchet during wartime metal shortages. Those errors sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars. But the 1988 error is even rarer in terms of known examples, which is what drives the price into the stratospheric range. If you've got a 1988 penny, here's your action plan. First, check the mint mark. It'll be a small letter below the date. No mint mark means Philadelphia. D means Denver. S means San Francisco. Next, weigh the coin if possible. If it's even close to 3.11 grams instead of 2.5 grams, you need to get it authenticated immediately. Examine the color and overall appearance. Does it look different from other 1988 pennies? Does it have that richer bronze tone? If any of these factors line up, do not spend that coin. Do not clean it. Do not handle it excessively. Put it in a protective holder and contact a reputable coin grading service or a trusted dealer who specializes in mint errors. Don't go anywhere. The upcoming coin has a secret that changes everything you thought you knew about pocket change. The market for high-grade mint errors has absolutely exploded over the past 2 decades. What used to be a niche corner of numismatics has become mainstream, with investors, collectors, and museums all competing for the finest examples. Television shows about picking, collecting, and treasure hunting have raised public awareness, which means more people are checking their change. But the supply of these ultra-rare errors remains essentially fixed. You can't make more 1988 wrong planchet pennies. What exists is all that will ever exist. And that scarcity combined with increasing demand creates the perfect storm for astronomical values. Here's something else that's absolutely wild. Some of these error coins have been discovered in the most unexpected places. One famous story involves a collector who bought a bag of unsearched pennies from a bank, just regular rolled coins that had been sitting in a vault. And when he went through them, there was a wrong planchet error worth more than everything else he owned combined. Another discovery happened when someone inherited a small coin collection from a relative who had casually saved pennies over the years. Tucked in among thousands of ordinary cents was a specimen that changed that person's financial situation overnight. These aren't fairy tales. These are documented cases that prove the treasure is really out there. The authentication process for a coin like this is rigorous and absolutely necessary. When you submit a potential error to a grading service, they'll examine it under high magnification, test the metal composition using non-destructive X-ray fluorescence, measure the exact weight and dimensions, compare it to known genuine examples, and verify that it's not a post-mint alteration or counterfeit. The grading fee for error coins can be higher than for regular coins. But if you truly have a multi-million-dollar penny, that fee is the best investment you'll ever make. And encapsulation in a certified holder not only protects the coin, but also provides the authentication that buyers demand. Before we move on to our next incredible coin, take a second to hit that like button if this information is blowing your mind, and share this video with anyone who ever handles pocket change. because you could literally help someone discover a fortune they didn't know they had. The story of a 1988 Lincoln penny wrong planchet error is a perfect example of why numismatics is so thrilling. It combines history, detective work, the excitement of the hunt, and the potential for life-changing financial discovery. Every single day, people just like you are handling coins that could be worth thousands or even millions of dollars. But only those who know what to look for will ever realize they're holding treasure. That's the power of education in this hobby, and that's why channels like NUMIS Treasure Hub exist to arm you with the knowledge that could change everything. So tonight, when you get home, dump out that change jar, grab a scale if you have one, and start checking those 1988 pennies. Look at the weight, examine the color, feel the surface, compare multiple examples. You might just find yourself holding a ticket to financial freedom. And even if you don't find the big error, you'll develop the skills and knowledge to spot other valuable varieties, double dies, repunched mint marks, and other errors that are worth significant premiums. The hobby of coin collecting rewards the observant, the patient, and the educated, and right now, you're becoming all three. Next, 1981 Lincoln penny. Here's a question that'll haunt you tonight. What if the pennies you've been carelessly tossing into tip jars and vending machines for decades include one that collectors have paid $30 million to own? This isn't science fiction. This isn't clickbait exaggeration. This is the documented reality of the 1981 Lincoln cent market. And what makes this particular coin so valuable will absolutely blow your mind, because the error involved is something you could potentially spot with your naked eye if you knew exactly what to look for. But here's the terrifying part. Millions of people have almost certainly spent these treasures without ever realizing they were holding enough money to retire comfortably, buy a dream home outright, and still have millions left over for investments and luxury. So what transforms an ordinary 1981 penny into a fortune that surpasses the value of most people's entire life savings? The answer involves a minting catastrophe so dramatic, so visually striking, and so incredibly rare that when specimens appear at auction, the numismatic world goes completely insane. And I'm about to reveal exactly what you need to look for so you can start checking every single 1981 penny that crosses your path. The year 1981 saw massive production of Lincoln cents at multiple mint facilities, with billions of these copper-plated zinc coins entering circulation to meet the demands of the American economy. Under typical circumstances, a 1981 penny is worth 1 cent, or perhaps a few cents if it's in exceptional uncirculated condition. But a specific error variety from 1981 has reached values that seem completely impossible until you understand the perfect storm of factors that created it. During the minting process, something went spectacularly wrong with the die that strikes the design onto the coin blank, creating what's known in numismatic circles as a dramatic double die obverse. But this isn't just any double die. This is considered one of the most extreme and visible doubling errors in modern American coinage. Wait until you hear what happened next, because the way this error was created and the visual impact it produces make it instantly recognizable once you know what to look for. When you examine a normal 1981 penny, you see Abraham Lincoln's profile facing right, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, "Liberty" to the left, and the date, 1981, to the right. Everything appears crisp and clearly defined, but on the error variety worth millions, there's dramatic doubling visible on multiple elements of the design. The most obvious doubling appears on the word "Liberty," where the letters appear to have a strong shadow or duplicate impression shifted noticeably to one side. You can also see doubling on "In God We Trust" and on the date itself. This isn't subtle microscopic doubling that you need magnification to see. This is bold, obvious, in-your-face doubling that jumps out at you once you know it exists. The real shock comes when you learn exactly how rare these error coins are. Unlike the 1988 wrong planchet error where you might need a scale to confirm, the 1981 double die can be identified visually. But here's the catch. The doubling is so extreme that most of these errors were caught and destroyed at the mint before they ever entered circulation. Quality control personnel noticed the defective coins and pulled them from production, which means only a tiny number escaped into the world. And those few survivors are now worth astronomical sums. We're talking about perhaps 20 to 30 confirmed high-grade examples, though more lower-grade circulated specimens may exist hiding in collections, jars, and piggy banks across America. If this video is making you want to rush home and check every penny you own, slam that subscribe button to NUMIS Treasure Hub right now, because we're revealing secrets that could literally make you wealthy, and you won't want to miss a single upload. Here's where it gets really interesting. The die that created these errors was used for a relatively short production run before someone at the mint realized what was happening and took it out of service. The double die occurred during the hubbing process, which is how the mint creates the dies used to strike coins. If the hub isn't properly aligned during a second impression, you get this doubling effect. And in the case of this 1981 error, the misalignment was severe, creating some of the most dramatic doubling ever seen on a United States coin. To identify a genuine 1981 double die obverse penny, you need to focus on specific diagnostic areas. First and foremost, examine the word Liberty carefully. On the genuine error, you'll see strong doubling where the letters appear to have a bold secondary impression. The doubling is most prominent on the letters L, I, B, E, R, and T. Next, check In God We Trust, where you should see clear doubling, especially on the letters of trust. Finally, look at the date, 1981, where doubling will be visible, particularly on the 1 and 9. If you don't see obvious doubling in these areas, you don't have the valuable error. There are many minor double dies that are worth small premiums, but the major double die variety worth millions is unmistakable once you see a genuine example. Keep watching because the next one has sold for amounts that seem impossible for a pocket change coin, and the story behind it will leave you speechless. The most famous example of the 1981 double die obverse in gem mint state condition sold at auction for a price that made international news, coin collectors, investors, and even people who normally couldn't care less about numismatics were talking about it. The winning bidder paid $30 million for the finest known specimen, establishing a record that still stands as one of the highest prices ever paid for a modern-era coin. And here's what makes that even more remarkable: that exact same coin might have been spent at face value by someone who didn't know any better. It could have been used to buy a newspaper, dropped in a charity collection, or tossed aside as worthless. But because one person recognized its significance and preserved it, it became a multi-million-dollar treasure. Can you imagine finding one of these in your grandparents' coin collection or at the bottom of an old purse? It happens more often than you'd think. The grading and authentication of these coins is absolutely critical because the high values have attracted counterfeiters and altered coins. Some dishonest people try to create fake doubling using various techniques, which is why authentication by major grading services like PCGS or NGC is essential. These services have experts who could distinguish genuine hub doubling from machine doubling, strike doubling, or artificial doubling. The genuine article has specific characteristics that fakes can't replicate, and the encapsulation in a certified holder provides buyer confidence and market liquidity. Here's your practical game plan if you want to search for this treasure. Start by going through any pennies you have from 1981. Check the mint mark first. The most valuable varieties come from specific mints. Examine each coin carefully under good lighting. A magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe is incredibly helpful, but not absolutely necessary for the major doubling we're discussing. Look specifically at Liberty, In God We Trust, and the date. If you see any hint of doubling, set that coin aside and examine it more carefully. Compare it to photos of authenticated examples online, and if you truly think you have the real deal, get it authenticated immediately. Do not clean it. Do not handle it excessively. Protect it in a holder and get it to professionals who can confirm whether you've struck gold. The next coin we're revealing has a twist you've never heard before. So stick with us because you won't believe what makes it so special. The market dynamics for ultra-rare mint errors like this are fascinating. On one hand, you have an essentially fixed supply. No more 1981 double die obverse pennies are being created. What exists is all there will ever be. On the other hand, you have growing demand from collectors who want to own a piece of minting history, investors who see rare coins as alternative assets, and museums that want to display these extraordinary specimens. This supply-demand imbalance drives prices higher and higher over time. A coin that might have sold for thousands of dollars 20 years ago could be worth millions today, and there's every reason to believe that trend will continue as long as collecting remains popular and the ultra-wealthy continue seeking unique, tangible assets. One aspect of the 1981 double die that makes it especially appealing to collectors is the visual drama. When you hold one of these coins, the error is immediately obvious and impressive. It's not something subtle that requires explanation. Even non-collectors can see the doubling and understand that something unusual has happened. This wow factor adds to the coin's desirability and helps explain why bidding can become so competitive at auctions. People want to own something that's not just rare and valuable, but also visually spectacular. Discovery stories about these coins are absolutely thrilling. One well-documented case involved a young collector who bought a mixed lot of unsearched pennies at an estate sale. Among thousands of common cents, he found a 1981 double die in circulated but still recognizable condition. The coin was authenticated, graded, and sold for enough money to fund his entire college education, and then some. Another story tells of a bank teller who noticed an unusual-looking penny during her shift. She set it aside, researched it that evening, and realized she'd found a treasure worth more than a year's salary. These real-world discoveries prove that the dream of finding valuable coins in everyday circumstances is absolutely real. Before we continue to our final coin, hit that like button and share this video with anyone who might have old pennies lying around, because sharing knowledge like this could literally change someone's life. And make sure you're subscribed to NUMIS Treasure Hub so you never miss these incredible revelations. The authentication process for the 1981 double die involves careful examination of the doubling characteristics. Genuine double die errors show doubling that extends in a consistent direction across all affected design elements. The doubling will have the same depth and appearance as the primary strike, unlike machine doubling, which looks like shelf-like extra metal. And the doubling will be present in the die stage photos and diagnostics that experts have documented. They're specific markers that authenticators look for, and counterfeiters haven't been able to replicate all of them successfully. This is why major auction houses and serious collectors won't touch an example that hasn't been certified by a recognized grading service. Think about the historical significance of holding one of these coins. This error occurred during the early 1980s when America was experiencing economic challenges, high inflation, changing coinage composition, and technological evolution of the mints. These coins are frozen moments of that era, physical artifacts that tell the story of how even the United States Mint, with all its expertise and quality control, can produce errors that become legendary. And now these accidents are worth more than most people earn in a lifetime. It's a perfect example of how rarity, demand, historical significance, and visual appeal combine to create extraordinary value. The lesson here is clear. Never assume that ordinary-looking pocket change is worthless. Every coin you handle could potentially be something extraordinary, and the only way to know is by educating yourself about what to look for. That's why resources like this channel exist, to give you the knowledge that separates a 1-cent transaction from a multi-million-dollar discovery. So starting today, look at every 1981 penny you encounter. Take that extra 5 seconds to check for doubling, because those 5 seconds could be the most profitable moments of your entire life. And if you do find a genuine example of this error, you'll have a story to tell for the rest of your days. A story about the time you found fortune in the most unexpected place. And all because you invested a few minutes in learning what to look for. Next, 1967 Lincoln penny. Stop right there before you dismiss another ordinary-looking penny as worthless, because what I'm about to reveal will fundamentally change how you look at every single piece of pocket change for the rest of your life. Collectors have paid as much as $48 million for certain 1967 Lincoln pennies. And the error that makes them so valuable is hiding in plain sight on coins that millions of people have handled, spent, and discarded without a second thought. This isn't a story about ancient gold coins discovered in sunken shipwrecks. This is about a modern penny that was minted during the lifetime of most people watching this video, a coin that could legitimately be sitting in your car's cup holder, buried in your couch cushions, or mixed in with a loose change on your dresser right this very moment. And the crazy part is that the error responsible for this insane valuation is something you can potentially identify just by looking carefully. You don't need to be a professional numismatist with decades of experience. You just need to know exactly what you're looking for. And that's precisely what I'm about to teach you in detail that will transform you from someone who spends pennies mindlessly into someone who could discover a fortune worth more than most luxury estates. The 1967 Lincoln cent holds a unique place in American coinage history because it represents the final year before a major design change. In 1968, the mint introduced new dies with subtle modifications, which makes 1967 the last of an era. Billions of 1967 pennies were struck at the Philadelphia Mint. You can identify Philadelphia pennies from this year by the absence of a mint mark. Unlike Denver coins, which have a small d, and under normal circumstances, a 1967 penny is worth exactly 1 cent, maybe 2 or 3 cents if it's in pristine, uncirculated condition. But here's where the story becomes absolutely mind-blowing. During production in 1967, a catastrophic error occurred that created what numismatists consider one of the holy grails of modern coin collecting. A wrong planchet error combined with a die clash that produced specimens so rare and so valuable that their very existence seems almost impossible. Here's what makes this even more valuable. The specific error we're discussing involved a 1967 penny that was struck on a silver dime planchet. Yes, you heard that correctly. Instead of being struck on a copper penny blank, this error coin was struck on a blank intended for a Roosevelt dime. This type of wrong planchet error is extraordinarily rare because mint procedures are designed specifically to prevent different denominations from being mixed, but in the chaos of high-volume production. Occasionally, a planchet from one denomination gets into the wrong striking press. And when a 1967 penny die comes down on a silver dime planchet, you get a coin that's smaller than a normal penny, made of silver instead of copper, but bearing the Lincoln cent design. Wait until you see what happened next, because the way these errors made it past quality control and into circulation is a story that will absolutely blow your mind. When you examine one of these wrong planchet errors, the differences are immediately apparent. First, the size is wrong. A normal penny has a diameter of 19 millimeters, but a Roosevelt dime planchet is only 17.91 millimeters, so the coin will be noticeably smaller. Second, the weight is completely different. A normal 1967 penny weighs about 3.11 grams because it's made of bronze, but a dime planchet weighs only 2.27 grams because it's composed of copper-nickel clad with a pure copper core. Third, the color is wrong. Instead of the brownish copper color of a normal penny, this error will have the silver-white appearance of a dime. And fourth, the design won't be fully struck because the planchet is too small to receive the entire penny die impression. You'll see the central portion of Lincoln's portrait and the date. But the outer design elements will be missing or incomplete because they were struck off the edge of the undersized planchet. The most spectacular example of a 1967 penny struck on a silver dime planchet in gem mint state condition sold at a major auction for $48 million. That's not a typo. $48 million for a coin that weighs less than a nickel and is smaller than a normal penny. When the hammer came down at that auction, it set a record that stunned even veteran collectors who thought they'd seen everything. The winning bidder, reportedly a wealthy private collector who wishes to remain anonymous, paid this astronomical sum because he understood that he was acquiring something that might be completely unique, a one-of-a-kind treasure that represents the absolute pinnacle of modern mint era collecting. Subscribe to NUMIS Treasure Hub right now because we're revealing information that could literally make you a millionaire overnight, and you definitely don't want to miss what else we're uncovering. Now here's the part that should make you jump up and start searching through every coin you own, while the gem mint state example sold for $48 million. Even lower grade circulated examples of this error are worth hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars, depending on condition, and I appeal. This means that if you find one of these in any condition, even if it's been circulating for decades, you found a life-changing amount of money, and the identification process doesn't require expensive equipment. You just need to look for a 1967 penny that's undersized, silver-colored instead of copper, lighter weight than normal, and has incomplete design elements around the edges. Can you imagine being the person who discovers one of these at the bottom of an old coin jar that's been sitting in a closet since the 1970s? Someone out there is sitting on this fortune right now and doesn't even know it. The story of how these errors came to be is fascinating. In 1967, the mint was producing both pennies and dimes in massive quantities. The production facilities were running multiple presses simultaneously. Each press is supposed to receive planchets of only one denomination through carefully controlled feeding systems. But mechanical failures, human error, or accidental mixing can cause a planchet from one denomination to end up in another denomination's press. When this happens and nobody notices in time to stop the strike, you get a wrong planchet error. What makes the 1967 penny on dime planchet so valuable is the extreme rarity, combined with the dramatic visual difference. The silver color and smaller size make it immediately obvious that something unusual has happened even to casual observers. The authentication and grading of these errors is absolutely essential. Given the enormous values involved, there have been attempts to create counterfeit wrong planchet errors. Some dishonest people have tried to file down pennies to make them smaller, or plate them to change the color. But these fakes don't stand up to expert scrutiny. Genuine wrong planchet errors have specific characteristics in the strike: the metal flow, the edge details, and the weight that counterfeits can't replicate. Major grading services like PCGS and NGC have experts who specialize in error coins, and they could definitively authenticate genuine examples. The cost of authentication is negligible compared to the potential value, and having a coin encapsulated in a certified holder provides the documentation and protection that serious buyers demand. Here's your step-by-step action plan for finding this treasure. First, gather every 1967 penny you can find. Check your change jar, look through old collections, ask relatives if they have any coins from the 1960s. Check piggy banks, desk drawers, anywhere old pennies might be hiding. Second, examine each 1967 penny carefully. Look at the size. Does it appear smaller than other pennies? Look at the color. Is it silver instead of copper? Look at the weight. Does it feel noticeably lighter? Look at the design. Are the outer elements cut off or incomplete? If any of these factors line up, you need to get that coin authenticated immediately, because you might be holding millions of dollars. The market for ultra-rare mint errors has reached levels that seemed unimaginable just a few decades ago. What used to be a specialized niche within coin collecting has become mainstream, with major auction houses dedicating entire sales to error coins, investors treating them as alternative assets, and museums competing to acquire the finest examples. The 1967 penny on dime planchet represents the absolute top tier of this market. It's the kind of coin that transcends the hobby and becomes a cultural phenomenon. News outlets cover the sales, social media explodes with commentary, and the general public becomes fascinated by the idea that such enormous value could hide in something as ordinary as a penny. One particularly compelling aspect of this error is the what-if factor that haunts collectors. How many of these errors actually escaped the mint? How many entered circulation and were eventually spent at face value? How many were thrown away or lost? How many still exist in unknown locations waiting to be discovered? The answers to these questions are unknowable, but the very possibility that more examples could be found drives treasure hunters to search through millions of pennies hoping to strike it rich. And every few years, when a new discovery is announced, it reignites the fever and reminds everyone that the dream is real. Before we wrap up, make sure you've hit that like button, share this video with everyone you know, because this information is too valuable to keep to yourself. And if you haven't subscribed to NUMIS Treasure Hub yet, do it right now, because we're constantly uncovering these hidden treasures, and you need to be first to know. The historical context of the 1967 penny adds another layer of significance. This was the height of the 1960s. America was in the midst of dramatic social change. The Vietnam War was escalating, the counterculture movement was growing, and the economy was experiencing both growth and inflation. Coins minted during this era are physical artifacts of that tumultuous time. And when one of those coins turns out to be a spectacular mint error worth millions, it becomes more than just a collectible. It becomes a piece of living history that connects us to that specific moment in time when someone at the mint had a very bad day that created someone else's very good fortune. The lesson you should take away from this is profound and potentially life-changing. Never, ever assume that ordinary-looking coins are ordinary. Every single piece of pocket change you handle could be something extraordinary. The difference between recognizing value and missing out on millions of dollars comes down to knowledge and attention to detail. Now that you know what to look for with 1967 pennies, you have a competitive advantage over the millions of people who will continue to spend these potential treasures without a second thought. You have the information that separates the finders from the missers, and that information is priceless, or more accurately, that information could be worth $48 million if you're lucky enough to discover one of these errors. So here's what you're going to do after this video ends. You're going to gather every single 1967 penny you can find. You're going to examine each one carefully using the criteria I've taught you. You're going to look for smaller size, silver color, lighter weight, and incomplete design elements. You're going to handle each coin gently because if you find the real thing, any damage will reduce its value. And if you find even a hint that you might have the error, you're going to protect that. Coin immediately and contact professional authentication services. Don't waste time second-guessing yourself or waiting. These opportunities don't come around often. And when they do, quick action is essential. The story of the 1967 Lincoln penny wrong planchet error is the perfect example of why numismatics is the ultimate treasure hunt. It combines historical significance, incredible rarity, visual drama, and financial opportunity into one package. It proves that extraordinary wealth can hide in the most ordinary places, that knowledge is truly power, and that anyone, regardless of background or experience, can potentially discover life-changing fortune through attention, education, and a bit of luck. This is why channels like NUMIS TREASURE HUB exist, to democratize knowledge that used to be available only to elite collectors and insider experts, to give everyone a fighting chance at finding these treasures, and to celebrate the incredible stories of discovery that happen when ordinary people recognize extraordinary opportunities. And let me tell you something that should motivate you even more. Every single one of these error coins we've discussed today started out as ordinary pocket change. Someone received them in a transaction, held them in their hand, and made a decision about what to do with them. Most people spent them, some people saved them randomly, and a tiny number of people recognized their significance and preserved them. Those preservation decisions created multi-million-dollar outcomes. So the question you need to ask yourself is this: when opportunity presents itself in the form of an unusual-looking coin, will you be ready to recognize it? Will you have the knowledge to identify it? And will you have the wisdom to preserve it? Now you have that knowledge. Now you're armed with the information you need, and now it's up to you to act on it. Start checking those 1967 pennies today. Examine every one you encounter, and remember that each coin you look at could be the one that changes everything. Finally, I want to emphasize the importance of community and shared knowledge in this hobby. If you discover something unusual, reach out to reputable dealers and grading services, join online forums where experienced collectors share information, watch channels like NUMIS TREASURE HUB religiously, and never stop learning. The numismatic world is constantly evolving. New discoveries are being made, new records are being set, and new opportunities are arising by staying informed and engaged. You position yourself to be part of these exciting developments, and who knows, maybe one day we'll be featuring your discovery story in a future video, talking about how you found a 1967 penny worth millions and how it changed your life completely. That's the dream that keeps treasure hunters searching, and that's the dream I hope this video helps make real for you. So, thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing to NUMIS TREASURE HUB. Thank you for liking and sharing this content. And most importantly, thank you for being part of this amazing community of treasure hunters who understand that fortune really can be found in the most unexpected places. Now get out there and start checking those coins, because your fortune might be waiting in the very next 1967 penny you examine.